Hello, it's Big Cheds. I'm back with another chapter of My Battles with Cancer, a candid patient and caregiver's memoir. I published this book in 2020 and I republished it in 2023, updated to streamlined, easier to read, and I have now the audiobooks available on Audible. I'm also the author of Trading Wisdom and Trading Quotes, also available on Amazon. This book, though, the cancer memoir, I want to be free to anybody and everybody. And that's why I'm doing it here, Cheds Trading on YouTube, one chapter at a time. So what we're doing now is preparing for chemotherapy again, preparing for my mom's chemotherapy. We're in the middle of part 2, and we just got her official diagnosis and the chemotherapy regimen. So we are preparing for chemotherapy again. Mom and I tried to deconstruct some of the day's major events while driving home, and it was really hard for either of us to even know where to begin. Mom talked about how she was feeling, and she confided in me some of her fears about the upcoming treatment regimen. She expressed trepidation at the depth of the challenge she was facing. As always, I tried to find a silver lining, and I rather emphatically stressed that she had the benefit of taking the rest of the summer to rest and heal before starting her chemotherapy. Hoping to soothe her worries further, I explained that instead of facing chemotherapy as a frail and recovering patient, she would be able to walk in strong, focused, and ready for battle. I was also quick to remind Mom of all the progress she had been making, and she seemed to buy into what I was saying, which in turn helped me to calm down. By the time we got back to my house, she seemed to be doing a lot better, talking more about her friends and her hobbies than her medical situation. As I watched her climb onto that recovery bed, I was pleased by the knowledge that she would be able to lay there comfortably and gather herself at my house. Imagining that she must have been emotionally exhausted, I turned off the lights so she could close her eyes and take a brief nap to recharge. This is a good time for me to gather my thoughts as well, so I went out to my man cave and I began to listen to music. While listening to some Baroque classical, I kept going over in my mind how powerful it felt to have all 3 doctors comfort my mother by telling her that her chemotherapy regimen would be nowhere near as caustic as mine. What did any of this mean? I kept searching for a deeper meaning, trying to find some inspiration in that exchange between the doctors, my mother, and my sister. Did it mean that I had been ignoring the major damage that was done to me to rid my body of that cancer? Did it perhaps also mean that I had repressed some difficult emotions and experiences, given just how strongly I reacted to the mere mention of chemotherapy drugs? These were some complicated matters I was trying to sort through. But despite the challenge, I knew that I needed to do so, not only for myself, but for my mother, so I could be as helpful a caregiver as possible. After a few more days of resting at my place, Mom seemed to be gaining strength, and she was moving around with a lot more ease. It was a pleasure to have her home with us, where we could keep a close eye on her. The time that we were spending together was also emotionally healthy for us. By talking with her about what she was going through, I was better able to frame my own experience. And I think in the end, that made it easier to help her get through each day. Eventually, Mom had made enough progress to go back home and take care of some errands. And that way, she could feel a little bit more like a normal person. She told me that she wanted to water the garden, check the mail, and see her friends, and basically do everything else that was part of her regular routine. She was focused on the idea that she had almost a full month before the chemotherapy regimen started, and she wanted to get her affairs in order before that time was up. A few days later, I gave Mom a call to check in and see how she was doing, now back at home by herself for a few days. She told me that she was right where she wanted to be, and to my ears, overall sounded really well. Given that we had recently been spending so much time together and were now only speaking every other day or so, I did feel a bit disconnected from her. And that was an unpleasant feeling. And part of me felt like I was abandoning her, even though I knew how illogical that was. I had to remind myself to trust that Mom would call me if I was needed. With the time and space away from Mom, I was able to step back a little bit and to decompress. Finally, I was able to sort through some stuff in my mind. Over the course of the next few days, I continued to make excellent progress on this cancer memoir. I was emotionally connecting to the process of editing and writing in a way that I had not been before finding out about Mom's cancer. After a nice long walk, I decided to give her a call to see how she was doing. And though her spirits seemed to have improved, she was also quite solemn. Explaining why, she told me that her final pathology tests had been processed, and the doctor emailed her, giving her the results. The report showed that they had removed an almost 12 centimeter tumor from her colon, and among the 45 enlarged lymph nodes they removed, 32 of them were cancerous. Mom told me that it was sobering to see those words in black and white, and she could no longer pretend that she did not have cancer. And I told her that I could relate to that feeling. She also told me that she was glad that they had removed the foreign object from her body, as well as all those quote unquote misbehaving lymph nodes, as she put it. Mom also expressed to me that it felt like her body had been invaded, and she did not appreciate that. That evening, I had a lot to think about. Hearing the news from Mom hit me hard. Thinking about the tumors that had grown in my body made me feel as if I had been violated as well. Needing to relax, I took a nice long shower, hoping to work some things out in my mind. And as I showered, I thought about the fact that I got my cancer seemingly out of nowhere at a rather young age. The first 40 years or so of my life were lived feeling young, strong, and durable, and without fear of any major medical problems. And now I wondered if I was going to let my cancer diagnosis, treatment, and recovery define me for the next 40 years and beyond, if I was lucky enough to live that long. During my last visit to the oncologist, he told me that I had to keep in mind that the chemotherapy had put a lot of pressure on my heart. It was a cardiac risk factor going forward, and so he stressed that I had to make healthy lifestyle changes. Based on that fact, as well as other experiences during my treatment, I was now undeniably damaged, and without a doubt, I was not young and invincible anymore. On the bright side, I was pleased with the fact that I actually had enough hair to use shampoo. It was triumphant to run my hands through my hair and to rinse out that shampoo, gently reminding me that I was still alive. My body would recover and would continue to regenerate. It was also that night, as I stood in the bathroom looking in the mirror, that I noticed something wonderful. I had been accustomed to checking myself quite frequently for any strange growths, ever since the doctor told me that the cancer could come back anywhere, that I have lymph nodes. And when I looked in the mirror this day, I noticed something spectacular. The patch of skin on my chest that had been bare due to radiation was now sporting several new shoots of hair growth. A wonderful sign that my body was indeed recovering. The following day, while I was watering my garden, I ran into a neighbor coming home from work. From our prior conversations, he knew that I was writing a book about my cancer journey, and he asked me how it was going. We talked about the writing process for a little while, and then about the health of my mother and how she was feeling. This neighbor was a retired doctor, so he had a few medical questions about mom's treatment, and that initial conversation led us to some interesting topics. He told me about studies that had been done to find out if people who are positive thinking have better health outcomes than those who are not. He insisted that the research showed on a cellular level that there was a difference. Those who were positive by nature had far better outcomes than those who were not. The power of positive thinking is a rather common saying, and it was interesting nonetheless to hear that they had actually done a study and that there was scientific basis to back up his theory, at least according to him. Hearing about this study made me feel good because I've always been a positive thinking person, and that gave me hope that further positive thinking would potentially help my body recover. The neighbor and I talked more about cancer and science, and then he told me about an interesting technique he had read about. Apparently, cancer cells are heavier than healthy cells, and there was a method being developed to seek out and destroy cancer cells by using a vibration or frequency to attack them. This concept was fascinating to me, though I was unable to verify what he had said after I did a little bit of basic Google research. He also told me about a technique to treat HIV by attacking and killing the protein that is attempting to attach itself to a T cell. The gist of it was that the HIV virus first connects to the T cell with these long arms before entering it, and this treatment was possible by using something called biomems, which is a form of nanite medical technology. According to Wikipedia, biomems is an abbreviation for biomedical microelectromechanical systems. A broad definition for biomems can be used to refer to the science and technology of operating at the microscale for biological and biomedical applications, which may or may not include electronic or mechanical functions. End citation. My neighbor was especially excited about this breakthrough, and he explained that scientists were able to insert these tiny devices that could seek out those long arms on the HIV virus and pull them up off of the T cell. After that happened, the virus would be swept up and flushed out of the body's natural vacuum system, so to speak, via microphage cells. According to Wikipedia, macrophages are a type of white blood cell of the immune system that engulfs and digests cellular debris, foreign substances, microbes, cancer cells, or anything else that does not have the type of proteins specific to healthy body cells on its surface. And this is done in a process called phagocytosis. We both remarked at just how amazing science is, and that 20 or 30 years ago, if I had been diagnosed with the exact same cancer, I would have been in a much more dire situation. On that note, we ended the conversation and we thanked our blessings. And over the next few hours, I thought more about those really interesting medical innovations he had mentioned to me. A few days later, Mom went into the hospital to have a port installed for her upcoming chemotherapy regimen. She happily reported that she did not feel anything when they put that device beneath her skin, as they had used a local anesthetic. Before the procedure, she was really worried that it would be invasive and painful, and she was pleased to report that her fears had been misplaced. Mom also reported that after the procedure, She met with her medical oncologist to discuss her treatment plan, and that overall, she was feeling pretty good. The doctor again confirmed with mom that she was scheduled to have 6 months of chemotherapy, with each session 2 weeks apart. 2 of the medications would be administered at the hospital over a 4-hour period, and then the third medication at home, slowly pumped into her body over the following 46 hours. The drug that would have to be pumped in is called 5-FU, or 5-fluorouracil. The medical oncologist explained during mom's prior appointment that 5-FU had been critically important in helping to improve the survival rates for those with colon cancer. At the end of each chemo session, the nurse would attach the pump to her port, and then 2 days later, mom would disconnect it. Mom was worried about how the chemotherapy would make her feel, and I empathized, remembering just how scary everything seemed before my first chemotherapy session. Hoping to imbue her with some confidence, I reminded mom that the doctors said that her chemotherapy would be nowhere near as harsh as mine. Chemotherapy was a first line of treatment for my cancer, lymphoma. And I reminded mom that her first line of treatment was the surgery. Chemotherapy was more of a cleanup procedure, akin to the radiation therapy that I went through. Once I had completed my chemo, the doctors recommended radiation as a precaution against my cancer coming back. And this was the same situation for mom with her chemotherapy, at least as far as I understood it. Next chapter, let's get it started already. That's when we're going to start mom's chemo session. My Battles with Cancer, a patient and caregiver's candid memoir. I published it in 2023, republished it last year. It's available now on audiobook, but I want it to be for free for anybody who it might help. So that's why I'm doing it here on YouTube at Cheds Trading. Of course, I'm Big Cheds on Twitter, the author of not only My Battles with Cancer, but I published Trading Quotes, which is a really cool book, and Trading Wisdom that a lot of you already know about, and I'm rather proud of. So, folks, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another chapter soon. Take care.